I think it's tremendously important that people be critical about where they get their financial news from. And that's because there's a moving target always, and most of the information out there you have to take with a grain of salt because a lot of it's just garbage, and we're actually in the middle of seeing why that's the case right now and why you have to sort of do your own research and create your own opinions when it comes to building your wealth and taking care of your money. So right now, recently, the Biden administration essentially announced through the whitehouse.gov site that basically ahead of GDP numbers coming out for the second time being negative. So a recession is typically defined as 2 negative quarters of negative GDP or gross domestic product growth. And that's how pretty much everyone in economics, everyone in politics has always essentially measured a recession. Well, basically, according to whitehouse.gov, they're basically saying that's not the official definition, which they're not wrong. The official definition is a significant, widespread, and prolonged downturn in economic activity. But right after that, according to Investopedia, because recessions often last 6 months or more, one popular rule of thumb is that 2 consecutive quarters of decline in the country's gross domestic product constitute a recession. So we are seeing that literally in the definition to an extent. But yeah, President Biden, Janet Yellen have come out essentially attesting that this is not a recession because there's other ways of monitoring a recession. And makes you think, okay, what's the reason that they're coming out and saying this is not a recession? Well, it's pretty obvious. If it is indeed a recession, it does not look good for the Democratic Party, and people get voted out of office. And this is not just being critical of the Democratic Party. Both sides do it. All sides do it. Every country does it. It's all the same shit, regardless of who's in power. But right now, we're seeing it live with the Democrats. We've definitely seen it in the past with the Republicans as well. But in this instance, this is why you have to be very critical about the information, because the information can be changed. We're in the process of seeing the definition of an economic recession attempt to be changed as we speak. So where have we seen this in the past as well that could also be impacted? This is something that's also very relevant right now, and that's inflation. So if we have inflation right now, according to basically the Federal Reserve, inflation, or I guess Bureau of Labor Statistics, not Federal Reserve, but inflation is 9.1%. So that's very high, right? But it doesn't necessarily paint the whole picture, and here's why. If you were to measure inflation the same way that it was the last time that we had inflation, it's well over 15%. So the reason this is because basically the government decided to change the way that it measures inflation. So now it used to be measured based on a basket of goods. Now it's based on cost of living metrics, which essentially give wiggle room to reevaluate and basically make decisions on what is the cost of living by saying that, a consumer that shops only at Whole Foods, when food prices go up, they're going to make the decision to start shopping at Aldi. That's not going to be reality. Whereas, Whole Foods is still doing good business, and not everyone's automatically going for substitutes. So they've, over the years, made it, strategically made it, better for the government to, not announce huge inflation numbers. And if we think about it, I don't know if this is the actual case. This may just be my tinfoil hat theory here. But there's a real reason why the government wants to let inflation run probably longer than the public wants it to run. And that's basically due to the U.S. debt. So right now, the U.S. national debt is about $30 trillion. Well, without going into too much complexity, there's really only one way to pay that debt back. You can either inflate the debt away, which many countries have tried throughout history. You can basically increase taxes or gross domestic product to make that debt go away, or you could sell assets that the government owns to pay off that debt. The government's not going to sell Yosemite anytime soon, and taxes, they're trying to raise taxes, but it's, hitting political, roadblocks and things like that. So what does that leave us? It leaves us, let's let inflation run a little bit and we can pay that debt back with cheaper dollars. So another government incentive for why inflation may not necessarily be realistic and why inflation numbers may be actually higher than the numbers present. So we're seeing again this going on in real life as we speak with the Biden administration trying to tweak how a recession is measured. So just as a consumer, I'm a big believer in basically protecting your money and taking personal control, because you can't count on things such as the government and such as anybody else to do it for you. You have to take control of your own personal finances and be an educated consumer and really understand what's going on, how things impact your wealth, and then make educated decisions that benefit for you for the future.